I was asked about speaking extemporaneously or on the fly. Take a breath. If that's what you want to know how to do, the only thing I can offer is that if you really do take a breath, diaphragmatic breathing, and it's what singers use and actors use and orators use in through the nose. Sometimes they'll go out of the mouth or out of the nose. I prefer out of the mouth for this so that it drops my shoulders. And after that, I trust that whatever comes after that is going to satisfy the requirement in the moment. Now there's a piece I'll add to this. Depending on where you are, if you're asked a question, which is sometimes where the extemporaneous speaking comes into play, more often than not, somebody's asked a question and they just seem to flow and they never seem to have notes. That's what people have said about me. Like, Prue, I watch you just go with no notes. Well, I'm the living notes. So if I was asked to present something and then there's a Q&A, because I've done the work to set up the presentation, I've already gone through my process to connect with the content, to connect with the context, to connect with the learning objective. And so sometimes I'll take walks or I'll walk around the house and talk to myself, which I do anyway. But that is not just rehearsing. It is me walking through what is my connection to what I've been asked to present. Now, when we get to the Q&A, while I may not be prepared for the specific question, meaning it may be a question that I didn't think of or may not have thought of. The question is in the context of the presentation. So if I recognize that this is one that may take some thought, I'll take a breath and I'll sit in silence because I don't need to be right. That's a big component. So many times we want to present or speak and be right about the information or be right about how good we look when we present it, that the ego gets in the way. EGO, edging good out, edging God out, however you want to frame that. It just means it's fear-based. If I don't sound good, if I don't articulate my thoughts, and if I don't use the king's vernacular, then somehow I'll be less than credible, which may go to an underlying belief that I'm not good enough. So now I'm not even present with the group because I'm feeding and nurturing my ego. Taking that breath allows me to surrender the ego and go, well, if I'm in this moment and you've asked me a question, I must have some answer. And sometimes the answer for me has been as simple as, give me 24 hours to research that and your contact information, and I will respond. Because there may be something that requires a little more time than we have in that moment. More often than not, the question is going to allow me to connect with the notes from which I live my life. And so I'm able to speak without having handwritten notes. If it is a moment where you are giving a presentation or it's a keynote address and all of a sudden you feel led to go off on what would seem like a tangent, that would be extemporaneous. It is off of the notes that you studied. It might even be off the notes that you have in front of you. Take a breath and go with it, because whatever that is going to work for whoever is gathered in that moment. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, but that message, that digression is going to be for somebody who needs to hear that. So extemporaneous speaking is knowing that whatever the prompt is, whether it's a question or a complete the phrase, if it shows up in your life, you have an answer for it. Taking the breath will allow the answer to come forward, and you may be amazed at what happens. So if you're a spoken word artist, take a breath and see what goes. You never know how this thing will flow. Now I'm scratching my head. Yeah, you know, I'm just making this up. And it's all good. Doesn't even need to rhyme, because I heard somebody go, that wasn't right. But see, if you just take a breath, for me, only God knows what is internal and will be allowed to flow. So in that hour, you may find that you're given something so right and so sublime that you just can't make it up. No need to write it down. You're the living testimony of standing on evolutionary ground. The evolution and the manifestation of all that you know will come out and flow like a river flow and overflow. And then you'll know that perhaps there is something richer than your ego, So take a breath in, let it go. Hope this supports your journey.